The beachside suburb of Mona Vale is like many others throughout the world with a surfing culture. The ocean is a magnet whether the waves are small or large. Farming began at Mona Vale around 1829. And still standing today, the Rocklily Hotel opened in 1886 to accommodate weary travellers overnight before they boarded a ferry to Newport. In the 1900s, housing estates were created on reclaimed sandhills, and by the 1920s, a general store had opened overlooking the Basin beach. Board riding became popular in the 1960s, with many locals taking up surfing using smaller, lighter 9-foot boards with a distinct shape called pigboards. To establish their identity as the Mona Vale Beachies, they built an unauthorised shack near the beach, which lasted a year before the local council demolished it. Those with cars crammed their vehicles with as many people and boards as possible to check the surf along the coast. By the middle of the 60s, developments in surfboard design allowed surfers to accomplish many different manoeuvres.
Going to surf movies with all your friends was awesome. Watching your idols on the big screen. Some of our heroes were the Californians, Nicky Dora, Dewey Weber, Lance Carson, and Phil Edwards. Inspired by the work of filmmakers John Severson and Bruce Brown, my brother Russell bought a Bolex 8mm movie camera to make his own film, featuring all his friends at Mona Vale, many of them outstanding surfers. I guess the fun part for Russell was the filming. The hardest part was spending many hours splicing the thin 8mm film together with sticky tape. The end result, The Ultimate Life, was a fantastic record of the Mona Vale surfing community in the 1960s.
Right in front of the Surf Lifesaving Club is a nice right and left-hand break. The stylish Jeff Channon and his younger brother Bruce from Warriewood Beach were regulars at Mona Vale. Bruce would go on to have a successful career in the surfing industry.
When I very first left school, I went to work straight away for Ron Wade. We were in the little factory at Polo Avenue at Mona Vale, and Ron got me started with pinlining and gloss coating. Then after a little while, Midget came and offered me a job to work for him. Warren Cornish was shaping there, Chris Crozier was the glasser, and Midget of course was overseeing the whole thing and shaping as well and designing stuff, so it was like really felt like I was in a place where I could really learn a lot. I was in all Russell's films right from the start. The Ultimate Life, which was his first one on Super 8, and then that evolved into Our Day in the Sun, and then The Winter's Tale. Luckily for A Winter's Tale, the boys started teaching me to shoot some footage then, which was really my launch into photography. So I was glassing at McCoy's at the time, and we had a really good surf team. Mark Warren, Dapper Oliver, Cole Smith was with us a lot. And if the surf was on, we'd drop tools and go and surf the alley at Narrabeen, wherever the waves were good on the northern beaches. I guess I was tasked with telling the boys where we were going to be, but it took them time to get themselves organised to get there. So at some stage, one of them, I don't remember who, said, how about we give you a camera and you shoot a few shots before you go in the water? And I thought, yeah, that sounds all right. That gave me some experience in working with the Bolex cameras, which were a bugger to load up. So when Bob Evans was doing a trip around the world with Peter Druin to make a surf movie, and it was, big production, all this sort of stuff, and he was having trouble deciding on the second surfer that was going to go with him, I went and pitched myself to Bob. If you take me, I can also help you out on filming work that goes on and be a backup cameraman for you. And so I ended up going on the trip with them to do Druin.
Palm Beach hasn't changed much since the 60s. Kitty's Corner at the southern end is often a short, fast little break. Surfers travel up and down the coast looking for good waves. Mona Vale surfers were no different. Richard Harvey cruises on a rolling left-hander. Midget Farrelly, one of Australia's best and most influential surfers, was a long-time resident of Palm Beach. Midget achieved fame by winning the prestigious Makaha title in Hawaii in 1960 and the World Surfboard Championship at Manly in 1964, defeating surfing greats Joey Cabell and Mike Doyle. Watched by other surfers, Midget puts on a masterclass in longboard surfing. Hawaii has been the mecca for many surfers, testing themselves on the large, powerful waves that roll in every winter. Bob Boot has been surfing since 1958 and is still as good as ever. He is regarded as one of Mona Vale's best surfers, especially in large waves. In 1963, Bob and many other Australians, including Queenslander Ken Adler and Bondi's Robert Keneally, competed for the Makaha title. Bob made it as far as the semi-finals, along with fellow Australians Ross Georgeson and Ken Adler. Bob's trip was eventful, wiping out on a 15-footer at Waimea Bay and smashing his board on the rocks, and hitting the reef at Sunset Beach after a spectacular wipeout. Mona Vale has a good right and left-hander at the northern end of the beach. And it can pack a punch when it's shallow. Colloroy surfer Nat Young turns on a performance riding his 10-foot mal.
About 61, I got a new board from off the rack in Barry Bennett's Harbourside Road showroom. I can remember catching my first waves in the Basin, and then I can remember the next weekend going to the other side of the Mona Vale swimming pool and surfing on the point and thinking, oh, this is cool. I was working in banking, and then at the same time I was going away on holidays and taking photos of the guys at Mona Vale. Well, back in those analogue days, that was the Instagram of the day. You had a photo album. I've got no memory at all of what the guys thought of them. I assume they thought it was pretty cool. Some of the prints were toned, blue-green, some were sepiaed, and you had photo corners and you stuck them down. And of course, then we had Letraset. I think it's a pretty interesting archive of 1964-65 surfing.
In 1964, Sea Beach Surf Riders Club was started, named after one of the roads leading to the beach. They had intra-club contests as well as competitions with surfers from other Sydney clubs, such as Bondi's Kevin Brennan of Wind and Sea and Cronulla's Bobby Brown. Richard Harvey was a standout competitor for Sea Beach. In small surf, he had a repertoire of spinners and nose riding him. In large surf, he was outstanding, and in 1968 won the Australian Championship held at Margaret River in Western Australia. Richard is very creative, working as a film editor, a designer for Billabong, a surfboard manufacturer, and has an art gallery of his work at Mermaid Beach, Queensland.
We all left our boards at a house that was in the middle of the Basin that was owned by the Triminal Richards. And they were a bit different to us because they came from up the North Shore. They owned the Hornsby Hotel. They had a hyphenated name. They were top blokes. There was two brothers. The parents were very generous with us. You know, we all hung in their yard. I don't know how they put up with us. The garage was full of our surfboards, so that I didn't have to carry my board from Warriewood every day. I'd stick it in the garage and then I'd just run down the headland at Warriewood, across the sand dunes, around to the Richards, grab my board, paddle out in the Basin.
Russell came up with the idea of an adventure sequence for the ultimate life. The scenario was that it was dead flat at Mona Vale, and Richard Harvey had a great idea. Let's find the perfect uncrowded wave. guys crammed into Russell's panel van and hung onto the roof racks.
I just remember it being so much fun to film, coming along that little stretch of East Bassett Street there with everyone hanging out of the van and going around the corner. We went up to Deep Creek and we were all paddling around.
So Russell filmed the guys paddling up a creek. They ran through the bush, over cliffs, and finally the dramatic charge over the sand dunes.
To finally see it in film and it to look like something out of The Endless Summer, we felt like we were creating that sort of a moment. It was really fun to be involved in. It was really fun to see it when it finally came out on film.
The best way to find good waves and have a good time was to pack as many guys, boards and food as possible into a car and drive through the city down to the south coast and have an early surf.
When we went away, it was total freedom. We had our tents, we had a sleeping bag in a car, and that's it. We could go and find the waves. We went north a lot, we went south a lot, and had just had amazing times.
On Green Island's rolling left-hander, Richard Harvey and Peter Hughes were the standout surfers.
Peter Hughes was fast, furious, but he was an athlete. Everybody seems to know Peter Hughes from football and other sports, but he was a powerhouse.
This sequence is one where I'm really indebted to Russell and Phil for filming it because I'd forgotten all about it. There's a photo of Donnie Frudenstein and I at Browley, and Browley's a long way down the coast, so it must have been in school holidays or something, and the swell must have been big because it doesn't get into Browley very often, and so we must have searched around and finally found a wave that was small enough to be able to ride, and that was inside the boat ramp at Redhead. Looking at that footage, I'm really amazed at how good the point looks, and I can't believe that I've never been back to have a look and see whether it still works. So obviously it does, but I've never seen it again. When I came back from doing Druin, I was a bit lost. I wanted to continue working in film, but I needed to make money along the way, and so I went back into making a few surfboards, working at various places like Morning Star, but I kept shooting photos. The editor of Surfing World was demanding more money than the people who owned Surfing World at the time wanted to pay, so Hugh said to me, "We're looking for an editor, you can spell, you know everyone in surfing, do you want the job?" And I said, "I don't know anything about magazines." He goes, "Oh, it's all easy, I'll show you. Just come along for the ride and we'll see how it goes." And so then Hugh and I had a partnership that lasted 25 years or something like that. I fell into the job at Australian Longboarding as well. The fact that I'd been Peter Morrison's opposition for the last 20 years and done everything I could to thwart his plans to take over from surfing world meant that Peter was a bit reticent to take me on, but Nick Carroll shouted my praises to Peter and I got the gig, and it ended up being 12 of the most enjoyable years of my life.
Colloroy is a pretty beach about 8 kilometres south of Mona Vale. This is where Nat Young grew up and learned to surf. Riding his longboard, he cruised effortlessly over and around these small waves. His younger brother Chris, on a much smaller board, pulled off nose rides and snap turns. When large swells pound the Sydney coastline, a good-sized wave breaks behind the ocean pool. Colloroy kick. Later this day, Nat borrowed a short board from another Colloroy surfer, Butch Cooney. This led to a new direction in his surfing. To the south of Manly Beach is Cabbage Tree Bay with Fairy Bower Headland jutting out into the ocean. It can get seriously big. When huge waves are unrideable, ocean swells entering the harbour either bounce or are refracted off headlands and can be ridden in Harbourside beaches. At rare times at Balmoral on Sydney's North Shore, there are small waves to ride.
You had to drive X miles down the road from the turn-off near Taree, and you turn near a house, and then you went onto this sandy track, and there's like, you go on the sandy track and there might be an upper section or a lower section to the sandy track. And then it came out onto a sort of a semi-clearing, and here was this beautiful surf spot. We called it Uggs Reef. I think it's known as Saltwater now. And we had some amazing weekends there. I've always been influenced by Dora surfing at Malibu, with his feet pushing these rails down. Now, you try to do that at Uggs Reef and you're a goofy foot and you backhand it. That's my version of Dora at Malibu pushing a rail down. It's a bit weird. When I look at that footage, I think, oh, what am I doing? I've never thought of Jeff Channon as an overtly stylish surfer, but he is. But Jeff is just so understated. He's so stylish. It just happens. There's a whole family of Channons, there's 3 of them. They're all stylish, they're all slightly different, they're all fantastic. And I just thought of it, he was just like Midget, and I'd never thought that before.
The trip from Sydney to Noosa would take 3 to 4 days, which included surfing on the way. When the road between Grafton and Yamba was flooded, the only way to cross the rivers was by punt. Then head off north to Noosa. Noosa in the 60s was a typical laid-back Queensland town, with weatherboard houses near the beach, a few shops and a pub. At Nationals, the famous surfboard maker Bob McTavish from Byron Bay was out cruising. Also out was Nat Young on a small board he called Sam. When it was flat, Whopper Dam was the place to go. Its wall is 24 metres high. It's a hell of a slide down the face. Tea Tree Bay is a fun small wave to surf. Out in the water with Andrew and Peter was Bill Money. And the stylish Kevin Platt. Also, there was Bob Evans, a legendary surfer, publisher and surf movie maker filming Nat Young. Using a new, shorter board, Nat went on and won the World Surf Contest in 1966 at Pacific Beach San Diego, California.
It was the spot, and it was where I went to hone my skills and where I just loved to surf. It had everything that I wanted in a wave. The Basin, even though it was little, the rocks attracted a bit more power, so you could use that power to create speed to then do a turn. Whereas surfing a beach break, it was just a flop, flop, flop. It hasn't changed now. It's still exactly the same for me. I still love surfing it. I still surf the same sections. I think I still surf them in a very similar manner. People didn't think of it as a serious wave except for us. The Mona Vale guys, we all loved it. It was serious fun, and there was a good culture there. There was a really good bunch of guys, and we were lucky that we had guys photographing it. That era of our life was amazingly chronicled, and it's something that we can reflect on and be really proud of.
Since the 60s, surfers have come and gone at Mona Vale, but the waves just keep rolling in. The old car park with its dirt surface has been replaced by asphalt and marked parking spaces. The inspector who collected parking fees on the weekends has been replaced by a machine. Mona Vale is no different to any other surfing beach in the world, where surfers young and old, on long or short boards, share the ocean.
Caught up with a guy called Terry Desai recently. I've had coffee with him twice, and he lives in the inner city. Terry lived at DY, and he was telling me that one of the reasons he loved coming up to Mona Vale with the Mona Vale guys were all doing stuff. No one was getting pissed or getting stoned particularly. There were about 5 or 6 people there who really got into the film industry and were photographers, and he loved that. He just loved the fact that there's all that energy up there. It was Gary Johnson, Phil Sheppard, Russell Sheppard, Bruce Usher, Bruce Channon.